What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 309 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, JR. I have my co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
You know, it's Valentine's Day.
Yep.
Spending it with my one true love, this microphone. And Alex. I'm just kidding.
Oh gosh.
Hey, man. You're my sentimental adjective, whatever you want to say.
I have no idea where you're going with this.
We're cool. Joining us this week over the internet machines is Amber Dionne. Amber, thank you so much for coming on.
Happy to be here.
This week I'm going to jump right into it, and I'm also going to hand it off to Alex to do his intro thing. But I just want to preface a little bit by saying that I am very excited to talk about everything that we're planning on talking about today, because this is just some really neat stuff. Alex, I'm going to hand it over to you.
I met Amber a long time ago. I was
Years switched to long time.
Yeah. I don't want to say how many. It's been a bunch. To be honest, it's probably been at least 7 or 8. When I was dating Jessica, she's like, "Hey, let's go to this house of this steampunk guy who makes this stuff," and we drove to Pennsylvania, I believe. Yeah, we drove to Pennsylvania, and there was a bunch of other people there doing this thing, and he was showing everyone how to make stuff. And I got to hang out with Mark Donnelly, hung out with Tom Williford. It was great. And then I also got to hang out with Amber. And as you do when you make a new group of friends, y'all make friends on Facebook, and years go by, and Amber makes some really cool statements, and I follow her stuff, and I like what she says. And just recently, some really important stuff's been happening, and I've got to learn more about her through Facebook, and so we have her on today to explain to us more about the SCA.
Psst, I'm opinionated.
Fitting title for the show, then.
So, the Society for Creative Anachronism, the SCA, it's an international organization where we research and recreate the arts and skills of pre-1600 Europe and other places, but mostly Europe. Our world, our known world, consists of 20 kingdoms, which the world is broken up into, with over 30,000 members residing all over. There's a kingdom in Australia and New Zealand. There's kingdoms in Europe. I think we're starting up a group in Africa.
Huh. We were reviewing the map before we connected.
It's all over. So it is. When we say it's a worldwide organization, we really mean it.
To prove my ignorance, the topic of the SCA came up at this event, and I turned to, at the time, girlfriend. I was like, "What's that?" And to give like the really super brief, like one sentence breakdown, she's like, "It's like a Ren Fair, but really extreme." And then like later on, I got more explanation where it's like the term Ren Fair is almost insulting, and I was corrected to see that how much goes on. And in my little head, I was like, "Oh, so it only happens in this one place that's kind of local between Jersey and Pennsylvania." And then, in the research, it's like, oh my, it's the entire country, it's the entire world. It's so huge, more than I possibly originally thought it was.
There used to actually be a floating barony. It was on an aircraft carrier. There were enough SCA members in the Navy that whenever whoever was on this aircraft carrier would just have their own group on the aircraft carrier.
That is so cool.
That's amazing.
And it was the only mobile group.
Right.
But it did mean a lot of, like-minded people, and, there's a sport part of this where people dress in armor and use rattan weapons.
What does that mean?
To beat people up. So, and
the term rattan, what
It's a kind of it's not a wood. It is the kind of stuff that rattan furniture is made out of. But rattan furniture is actually strips of this wood rather than sticks of it.
Oh, okay.
So you get the whole stick, and it's a lot bendier than regular wood. So when you hit somebody, you're not going to hurt them as badly.
You're not going to cripple them. Maybe just leave a bruise or a welt.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the reasons we do have a minimum armor standard that you have to have before you're allowed on the field. So I don't know the exact details of that particular standard because I don't fight personally, but you have to have certain coverage to be able to be allowed out on the field because otherwise you're gonna get hurt.
People may have seen like glimpses of this on like the 30-second news clip either online somewhere on the news where it's like, oh, it's a medieval MMA. It's brand new, and they actually fight with swords and armor. It's like it's not new. Obviously, it's been going on for 50 years. if you've been paying attention, and at the same time, like one of the things Jared asked me in pre-show, it's like, is this like the thing one of our friends did? I go, no, that's LARPing. That's different. Because those are foam pads usually, whereas this is like, nope, that's pretty much mostly a sword. And the reason you wear a helmet and, proper eye coverage is that you don't actually
is
die.
to protect you from the sword.
There are groups that are not affiliated with the SCA that actually do use real steel weapons, but they have even higher armor standards than the SCA. So, so we're kind of like an in-between on the sport aspect between those steel weapon people and the people that LARP where they're mostly using foam stuff. So it's a lot more blunt force trauma. So my brother actually started fighting when he was like 6, I guess.
Wow.
I mean, technically he was like 2 the first time he took a swing at a duke, but like
that's something that I can't say that myself, and I'm kind of upset. I can't say that I've taken a swing at the Duke, regardless of whether I was 2, whether I was 31.
Yeah, so he was on a stage because a lot of local events get held at like churches or small halls, and this hall had a stage, and he was up there and he was playing with a pair of sticks, and my parents had seen him and thus were on the way to the stage. But Duke Baudouin got to the stage first, and he said, "Can I have this stick?" And my brother looks at his hands that are holding the sticks, judges which one he's going to hand them, and he hands him his offhand stick. So hands him a stick, and thus having armed his opponent, does this gorgeous snap and smacks him. So they did get a rematch once my brother grew up. But yeah. So but yeah, it's yeah, I know, right? So but yeah, so it's definitely, so he got into youth combat where they use more foam weapons than they do rattan because you don't want to hurt little people.
Right.
Yep.
So, but you're using the same techniques and the same rules as the adults. So that once you have basically grown up, you can just kind of swap your weapons out and move on.
That's so easy. So the wrestling they teach you in high school is not the same as college wrestling and Olympic wrestling. Which, thanks for that. It's like I got to learn a whole new style. It's like, oh, you're going to graduate. Well, what you knew was wrong, but go on.
Yeah. So it's, but a lot of what they teach kids, whether you're into fighting or not, because I grew up in the SCA. I joined when I was conceived. So there is photographic proof of my mother, like 7 months pregnant, at an event with 2 of the other ladies who were pregnant. There were 6 women pregnant at the same time. And they all gave birth between July and August. Um, so I have 5 other people in my cohort who were just kind of like, also, let me tell you, the blackmail pictures my parents have. So, um,
So one of the things that I got wrong, I was figuring I would liken it to a convention. Like,
Right.
Boston Comic Con is once a year. But this sounds like you could get multiple events depending on your location or what else is going on throughout the year.
there's literally an event every weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was
In your location or across the world, I imagine.
Well, in the kingdom. So the Kingdom of Atlantia, which is my kingdom, runs from the Mason-Dixon line to just about Georgia or the top border of Georgia with a little tiny bit of Georgia. So in there, you're going to have an event somewhere in the weekend, and events that the king and queen aren't going to have to be like 200 miles apart for them to conflict. So there are rules on who can hold events when, depending on because you don't want to split your audience too much,
Right. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of, you'll have an event up in, like Maryland, and then you'll have another event in like South Carolina. And obviously you're going to get 2 different audiences for that. But if it's a royal event, like say, the king is being crowned, it's his coronation, that's going to be the only thing going on that weekend.
Okay.
Because they want everybody to come to that one.
Yeah.
So, so there are a couple big events every year like that, where it's like you're only going to have that one event happening, as opposed to like several smaller events happening. But literally every kingdom is like that. So multiply that by the 20 kingdoms, and you have a lot of events going on.
I have an unbelievable amount of questions, but I'm going to start kind of where you left off there. You mentioned at the beginning and also a moment ago, there are 20 separate kingdoms. Now I'm looking at, and this is across the globe. There is a handy map that you can access on the SCA website that I've been ogling for a little bit. I'm also looking at the listing, like the kingdoms of the SCA in order of the founding. Dates are given when the group became a kingdom, which is the crowning of the first king and queen. Now the first one was the West Kingdom, which was May 1st of 1966. It has A period S period 1. Is that like regarded as...
So that is Annos Societatis, the year of the society.
Okay.
1. So that was founded in the very first year, because actually the society was started by author Diana Paxson in Berkeley, California on May 1st, 1966, as a party. She wanted to throw a medieval party, but then it kind of got out of hand. And turned into what we have today. But yeah, so it started in California.
That's like the best accident.
Yeah, right.
Oh, got out of hand. What happened? We're 30,000 members strong now.
My party turned into 20 kingdoms. So looking at the listing here, first one established in 1966, and then it kind of goes from there, one every couple years at least. Second Kingdom was 1968, then it goes to 1969, 71, and so on and so on. It looks like the longest gap was between the most recent two. Oh God, I'm going to try not to butcher. I do apologize.
It's Glenavon.
Yep, that one. Glenavon and Avakal. Avakal.
I'm actually not quite sure how they pronounce their name.
There was.
But, I call them Avakal, but there's got to be a pronunciation guide somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure if I did a little digging, but either way, there was 10 years between those two, from November of 2005 to June of 2015. Is there like I have like a layered question here. I'm so
Okay.
curious. What goes into, like, is it a big deal? Obvious, like, at first when, hey, we're going to introduce a new kingdom, and like, what goes into it? Is there like a vetting process? Like, how does this happen?
Okay, so it's based on membership. So what you get is first there's a kingdom. The current process. In the beginning it was just sort of, hey, we have too many people, let's split. But the current process is that you have a kingdom, and then you have a portion of the kingdom say, hey, we have too many people in this portion that don't want to travel all the way down to that portion, which is what actually happened with the newest kingdoms. Like the newest kingdom is actually a bunch of Canada. It's Eastern British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. And they didn't want to go down to Antir events, which is Oregon, Washington, the northern tip of Idaho, and then a bunch of British Columbia, the Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. Okay, so Avakal was like, that is a little far to travel, and we have all these people, so how about we try being a principality for a while? And they have to vote on that, and there's a whole process of getting a principality started, but it's based on, okay, you have to have X number of members in this area. And then you have to prove that you can sustain being a principality for a while. And then once you've been a principality for a while, you get to become a kingdom if you continue to sustain the momentum. And that's kind of how a lot of things happened. Like, so you had the three main kingdoms in the U.S. that started out were the East, the West, and the Middle. And the Middle only happened because the East and the West got too big, and they were like, hey, all these people in the Middle are complaining about, not being able to get to events. We should do something about that. But then the East started getting too big because that was the entire East.
Yeah.
And so the Principality of Atlantia happened. And my one of my uncles was a prince of Atlantia back when it was, just a principality. So he never became king because, well, that requires a kingdom. But so he was prince of Atlantia during its principality years. So definitely, really neat to be able to have part of that history, You'll
have to excuse I did have one super quick question.
Sure.
In a principality, is
Yes.
the prince kind of the leader?
Yes, he
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
He's basically the king, except, in a principality, so it's a prince.
Right. Got it. Okay,
right,
that makes
right.
sense. Can go on.
So, yeah. And once it becomes a kingdom, the next reigning person will become a king.
Right.
So, or queen, depending.
How
Which
long?
is an
Sorry.
for it.
How long does a reign last?
It depends on the kingdom. Usually, like the most commonly used format is you get 6 months as king. So what happens is you'll have 6 months as king, and then have to step down. But in the middle of there somewhere, maybe like 3 months in, you have a crown tournament to choose the next guy.
Okay.
And anybody is welcome to enter. And recently, as SCA years go, they have allowed same-gender couples to fight.
Okay.
So you have to have a consort. So a lord must fight for a lady or another lord. Or if a lady fights, she has to fight for another lord or a lady. So you can't do it alone.
Okay.
But so you go and it is by trial by basically it's right of arms. You're king or queen by right of arms. You go and you have this tournament, and you beat the other guy up until you're the last one standing, basically. It's a tournament. It's 1-on-1, but you know, you just got to get to the end. A good friend of mine is about to be crowned in Atlantia, so I'm really excited for him. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. And so you do it by the combat, and then you go around and you get like usually between like 2 and 4 months as prince and princess before you get crowned as king and queen, as kind of a, hey, this is what you're going to get into.
Okay.
Good luck. So, it's definitely a training exercise for that first couple months before you're crowned. So, I have to admit that I have told people, please listen when people give you advice.
All right, I want to come back to the king and queens later. Because there's more on that. There's a big topic we'll get to a little bit later, and so for listeners, like, as you're explaining the kingdoms, for anyone who doesn't understand the scope, now we're talking about like real life stuff. Like, oh, you've heard, you know, kids talk about make believe and like, oh, you know, the Genosha was attacked by sentinels or whatever, and like this isn't like a make believe thing. It is, but like there's real people. There's real, like, looking at the map, it's like it is actually divided, and even like the footage on the videos and all the pictures, these are serious events. And like in my head for a second, like as you're explaining, you know, the Kingdom of Atlantia, and it's like, don't take this for granted. Like, this is really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun too. So I mean, because each kingdom is split up into baronies and even smaller groups, but baronies are the standard ones. And there are, where I live in the DC region, there are several baronies that are pretty close together, but that makes it a smaller group that you can, you know, do local events with. And you have like fighter practices, you have sewing nights, you have like, some have scribal stuff for doing calligraphy and illumination, some have brewing nights. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the local area.
So while the fighting thing might be like the sexiest thing to advertise, like, I don't want to step away from any of the creative aspects, because still, like, that is, when I was reading up on some of the stuff, and as you said, there's a heavy influence on like researching how these things were done at the time and then trying to reproduce that. And it's like, you know, when there's a sewing night, no one's going to use a sewing machine. They're going to do this by hand.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, I use a sewing machine just because I hate hand sewing.
But you're not going to bring it with you to an event.
Yeah, you know. My mother, on the other hand, is amazing at embroidery. She does opus anglicanum. It's a fine needlework that usually uses like gold or silver threads, like actual real metal.
Wow. Around
the threads. So it's really awesome. And her work with the Bayeux tapestry stitch is also pretty amazing. She's done everything from Japanese embroidery, which uses flat silks that you have to then twist into thread yourself, to couching gold work. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then not only that, but you have to like document what you're doing. Okay. So you're basically writing research papers for fun.
And even just the, like, you're naming all these different methods or style or techniques, rather, I guess. It's like, I've never known a thing besides, oh, it's just sewing.
Yeah.
Like,
you sew it.
There's different styles and different methods, and in being able to pass this on. And at what point, there's so many, I'm sorry if you can't answer all of that. I'm just like vomiting questions.
It's really hard to like, I'm sitting here like trying to angle my next line of questioning because they come in groups.
Like doing this historical research. At what point is there more research? Like, haven't we discovered all of it yet?
No. Um, okay, so funny story time.
Okay.
There was a village found. I want to say Viking, but it might not have been. And by the way, Viking is a job description, not an ethnic identity. It is something you do, not something you are. So,
I get it.
but
Yeah.
yeah, shorthand, a Viking village. And they found these in the doorways. They found these bowls, like, dug into the ground, basically. Like, there was this depression, bowl-shaped depression in the ground. And they were like, well, that must obviously have, religious, that must be there for a religious purpose, because, that's kind of what you assume. Well, someone basically built another, reconstructed a village to have, to do living history.
Yeah.
And turns out, when the chickens went inside from being outside, they stopped in the doorway and rolled around in the dust and formed these bowl-like depressions, which are, in fact, not for religious purposes. So it's definitely all about the practical application of history and finding out, okay, so we have this text, we have this picture, we have this sculpture, this painting. How does it actually work?
Right.
Yeah. I want to say practical archaeology, but that's not quite it. It's just, like, you're literally living the archaeology.
Yeah.
Another good friend of mine, she has a doctorate in Norse studies, basically. She's just like the most intelligent and amazing person I know. And that's not even her day job. But like, if that was what you're interested in, you obviously, that's somebody that you go talk to,
Yeah.
And that's also another great thing about the SCA is that communication for scholarship is a lot easier because, especially with the advent of social media, because now you just like, oh, hey, I'm interested in this Norwegian thing called nail binding, which is knitting with one needle. It's definitely interesting. My friend happened to write the book on it, literally.
Huh.
And not the friend that has the doctorate, another one, also incredibly smart. But she wrote the book, and she gets people literally from around the world, okay, including like Norway, asking her, how do you do that? Can you like actually expound upon this point that you wrote in your book?
Right.
And perhaps maybe make a video of you doing that. Thanks. And it's just, but you're able to reach out and you're able to say, hey, I want to learn more about that. Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I think, one of the greatest aspects of the society as a whole is that the sharing of knowledge and the sharing of our passion for history. So
That's
it's definitely cool. Yeah.
So finding people who are into the stuff that you're into and then being able to learn and or teach that thing. That's especially stuff that's, been extinct for hundreds of years.
Yeah. I mean, we stopped before, gunpowder in Europe was just starting, but it's, 1600 is our cutoff. 1605 if you are being really super generous, but 1600. So a lot of people, but we have no start date. So, because people always argue
Right.
when we try to, even think about a start date. So we have people going around in Roman outfits at the same time as people are going around in Elizabethan full gowns.
Right.
So, and some events have themes, but you're not required to stick to that theme. It's more of a challenge to say, hey, we're doing this theme. If you want to dress up for it, go ahead, but this is our theme.
Mm-hmm.
So,
are there like seasonal themes? That might be a stupid question.
Well, actually, kind of. There's an event every year called Twelfth Night, which is in early January usually, because Twelfth Night being the 12th night after Christmas, when the wise men finally found a map and got to the baby Christ. So that's where it's based off of, right? So it's Epiphany. And while we are not a religious group, Twelfth Night was one of those events in medieval times that was huge. I mean, huge. So we use it in the SCA as hey, it's the middle of winter here in the north, in the northern hemisphere anyway.
Right. Yeah.
It's the middle of winter, which means we're having, it's cold out. Let's dig out the fancy garb. I can wear layers. So it's definitely, it's a lot more like, that's what it's like, I don't know, prom maybe.
Okay.
So, and that is definitely one of those that is a, definitely like a kingdom level event. So you don't, nobody can kind of have another event that weekend.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It's definitely a lot of fun.
This is going to be an ignorant question, because I'm still grasping the idea of like what was also historically going on at the time, and like was this before Halloween was a thing? Because I want to be like, oh, is there a Halloween event?
Well, okay, so Halloween started out as a pagan holiday, and
Right.
so it's been around a lot longer.
Yeah.
But usually the Halloween type events are local events.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they're usually held around the time of Halloween. They're not they don't, just like 12th Night, they don't necessarily happen on the day, because most of our events are held on Saturdays. But they're usually really super, like, while we're family friendly normally, these ones are like super duper family friendly. Because everybody wants to bring their kids, and like there's a local event around here for Halloween that they literally have candy at each table, so the kids go to each table and trick or treat at feast, which is dinner. So so they get to go around and trick or treat, and like after dinner they can have some candy.
Do they wear like 17th century accurate like scary costumes?
Well, not usually scary costumes, and depending on the age of the child, they're
Right.
either going to be wearing medieval outfits,
Yeah.
or if they're really super like, I'm going to cry if I cannot wear my Iron Man costume.
Okay.
Because it is a balance,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you have a lot more leeway with kids because they're kids. But I wore my first Elizabethan before I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it's this tiny, gorgeous, like almost tan colored with pearls all over it. I mean, it is gorgeous. I hope to give that thing to my own child someday, but because I grew too fast, much too fast.
Yeah.
So, pro tip: do not make your child really super duper fancy garb until they stop growing like a weed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's, like, there's it didn't used to be so family friendly because you had, like, young professionals doing this at first, and they're like, hey, I don't want to deal with that whole family nonsense, take your kid away from me. and then people got old and had kids, and they were like, oh, maybe that's not a great idea. So we're on our, depending on who's having it, is third or fourth generation of SCA members.
Right.
So I'm a second generation. And then hopefully when I eventually someday have kids, they will be third generation. Which is also a really unique thing to have to happen. So it's definitely fun and interesting though, just to, like, I don't know, just be a family in the SCA.
Yeah.
Because my blood related family, right, is really tiny. My dad's got a sister, my mom's got a brother, and that's kind of it. I mean, they're married and there's some extendedness, but, like, I don't talk to my dad's sister, and I see my mom's brother maybe once a year.
Yeah.
But then the people that my mom and dad met in college, or when they joined the SCA, those people I grew up with, and those are the people I call aunt and uncle. Those are the people I call my cousins. Those are, they are more real family to me than the people I'm blood related to. So, it's definitely a way to make connections, and, like, I don't know, it's really awesome.
Since it's been really easy for you to get in and you've just basically stayed in, what is it like for a new member? Like, what do they have to, do they just, like, sign up and pay dues, or is there a trial and a test? Like, how would someone go about joining their chapter of the SCA?
Okay.
Their kingdom, rather. Whatever.
Well, the chapter of the SCA, it's fine. Because you're gonna you're gonna be in their local group, which may be a barony, it might be a shire, but it's within the kingdom. So, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go to ska.org, and you're gonna find your group, and then you're gonna reach out to that person's chatelaine. The chatelaine is an office that is literally toward making newcomers feel welcome. That is their job. They are there to help someone new become familiar with the SCA and hopefully want to stay. I am personally of a common philosophy called everyone is a chatelaine. So I may not be officially the chatelaine for my group, but I do outreach like, this. And talking about the SCA and saying, hey, this is really cool. But, so you're always trying to make people feel comfortable. So I think the one thing I want to stress is that even if you have, like, horrible anxiety, like I do, social situations and sometimes not the best combination. There's emails. You can just write an email. You don't have to call anyone.
I'm looking at one right now.
You don't have to buy a membership to show up anywhere. Though you do get a discount at events if you're a member.
Okay.
It's about $5-ish cheaper to be a member than it is a non-member to go to an event. But if you go to a bunch of events, that actually makes it really worth it to be a member. So membership is fairly cheap, but you can get in contact with a chatelaine, and if they don't have a chatelaine, then you can get in contact with a seneschal. The seneschal is basically the person who is legally the representative for the barony toward the corporation.
Okay.
Which
by the way, Jer, it looks like our chatelaine is Master Erhard von Stuttgart.
Okay,
Yeah.
good to know.
Yeah, I wanted to check and get that to you.
feel you.
Go with
But yeah, so you reach out to somebody and just be like, hey, I'm new. How do I start?
Mhm.
And a good way to start is to come to some of the local kind of like sewing night or fighter practice. You know, you can get your kind of feet wet there because you don't really need garb for that. And then if you do decide to go into an event and you're going to be new, let somebody know that you're coming and they can arrange to have loaner garb for you. So you don't even have to make your first outfit to be at your first event. You just have to, you know, be willing to, you know, like wear whatever they give you. Sometimes that's a toss up. I will let you know. Some groups have better stores of spare garb than others. If you know somebody in the SCA, you can always ask them, hey, do you have an extra something I could wear? Which tends to happen a lot.
I have been to a short film shoot where the stunt guy didn't have any garb. It was a Civil War reenacting, but like if you ask a reenactor to show up, and they will.
Yeah.
And some of the guys like had, you know, spare parts, and the stunt guy suddenly now like had like a full, like a good outfit to wear just because it was all loaner materials.
Yeah. It kind of is hilarious to me how intrinsic the Civil War reenacting community is to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because they cannot make en masse enough outfits in the quality that they have. They already have their tents. They already have their outfits. They already have their kits. You just say, hey, can you have a union set up over here? And they're like, sure, let's do that. So I am in awe of those guys.
That's what it was. Somehow it's like they got like a small squad of rebels and like a good like encampment of the North, and it was neat to watch. And I just had to make a couple guys die and then be death. It was fun.
That's all you had to do.
Yeah, I had the easy part.
Yeah, I mean the SCA is really nice too because it's like I'll go to a weekend event where, say, it's a local event and it's not kind of like there's not any like the king and queen aren't there per se.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's just the local people that you already know, or have gotten to know if you're a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super chill, super relaxed. You sit down. People bring what are called DayBoards, which is when you set up a tent, like a kind of open tent kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's more like a pavilion than an actual tent, where you have hospitality. So you have some food, you have some drink, you have chairs all around, and you can, you know, just chill out. Mm-hmm. But people kind of go from people's setups to other people's setups so that, you know, you get to talk to everybody and you can sit and you can chat, you can meet people, you know. There are vendors, we call them merchants, that sell stuff. And if you do not sew, that is a great thing because they will sell you garb. You know, and it's definitely an interesting thing. Like I have yet another friend who does pottery,
Mm-hmm.
but he bases a lot of his pieces on extant works. You know, from like Italy, from, you know, France, all of these different places, you know, like all over. And he kind of, if not recreates, he uses the style.
Okay.
And says, if I was a, you know, like, I don't know, 13th century Italian potter, this is the kind of stuff I would make.
Uh-huh.
You know?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the research, man. The research.
Okay. Let's
Yeah.
get into the main thing that I saw that made me want to look into this more.
The poorly researched. Yes.
Yes. I guess I don't have a full grasp on us, so if you just want to start going, and we'll probably
Sure.
pepper in a few questions here and there.
Okay, so first, what happened was earlier this year, just at the beginning of January, the King and Queen of Kayid had their coronation, where they were stepping up to take the throne. Um, and they were going to be king and queen for, I think their term is 6 months out there, but um, so they were going to be king and queen for 6 months, but the garb that they had commissioned, because when you become king and queen, you want to wear something super fancy, had some trim on it that caused an uproar. I'm not even going to say controversy, because there's no controversy. There's merely realizing they were idiots. But so this trim was based on a woven band, which was, we think, used as actually a sword hanger, not trim.
Mm-hmm.
But it's from a 6th century Norwegian find. The thing about it is, though, is that the pattern has a repeating pattern and then another repeating pattern, both of which look, no, they really are. They're basically a swastika and a rune that now looks like an HH.
Yep.
So, so their official pictures for putting up on the corporate website, we're going to have this.
Right.
With a swastika right over the king's heart. The placement was not his fault. That was the dude who put the trim together and put it on the garb himself. But, it was just bad. To make things worse, there is evidence that they were told that this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
And they were like, but no, we will reclaim the swastika. No. So
that's a just give up point. There's nope.
Yeah. So when this broke, I started putting together literally a list of links that of everything, every single statement, every single picture, every single historical document that shows what this is. I started just being a resource, because it was very important to me, and this was an issue just close to my heart, because it's just a bad idea. Anyway, so I have but I've put together a website where I'm going to take the public post I have on my Facebook down. So should I ever try to find a new job, that's not laying out there.
Right.
But I've got a new website called inclusivesca.com. And on it, I have curated all of those links. So the thing with the swastika is that it is actually prohibited in heraldry. So on people's shields, on people's registered, devices, their armory, they can't use the swastika.
Now, is that like an already written rule that they already had,
Oh, yeah. It's been since the beginning of the SCA.
Okay.
So it's the quote on the webpage is, despite its albeit rare existence as a period charge, it is too reminiscent of Nazi Germany to be registered in the SCA armory.
Right.
Which, fair. But the thing is that's the only place it's prohibited. So you just can't use it on your shield. You can't use it on your heraldry. So this trim, they were like, oh, it's fine. No, really, spoilers, not fine. Now, is it illegal? Here, where they were, out west in the United States, no. However, as I have said previously, the SCA is a worldwide organization.
Right.
We have groups in Germany.
Yeah.
There is a law in Germany prohibiting the display or use of symbols of unconstitutional organizations. So it would violate the law in part of the SCA.
Right. Okay.
Like the modern actual law.
As they
of
say,
a-
it would fall under, like each country's laws.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, like, if he were to go to an event in Drachenwald, which is the European kingdom,
Uh-huh.
chances are that would be he could, end up in jail.
Yeah.
Um,
What, like,
and then-
people don't realize that sometimes. Like, no, the swastika is illegal in Germany.
Yeah, it is.
And
Yeah.
and like one of the things I like to point out, which I'm usually not like the right source for this, when the producers, like the Broadway, the
Play,
production,
the musical.
when that traveled through Germany, they didn't put swastikas on the banners for Springtime for Hitler. They replaced it with a symbol of a pretzel.
that
like,
is
well,
phenomenal.
Like, that's how much work they had to go into to follow the rules. And even though it's a production, it's a play, or it's a musical, it's like, nope, this is how we're gonna fix this and change it, and abide
Yeah.
by the law.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So the board of directors of the Society for Creative Anachronism, they put out a statement on hate speech, basically saying don't do it, and that the president of the SCA would actually be investigating this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
They also put out a request saying, hey, we have this mission statement and we think it's inclusive, but if you think it needs to be changed, please send us an email. And so I've been encouraging people that if they want a more inclusive mission statement, they need to email the board.
Mhm.
And also to make it very clear that you should also write the board to say, hey, hate speech is, I agree, very bad. Let's make it forbidden to wear the swastika,
Right.
not just on heraldry, but like on garb. Because if somebody made this band, the Snartamo 5, as an arts and sciences project, like my mom does embroidery, like if somebody made the band
Yeah.
and entered it into an arts and sciences competition,
Okay.
it would be okay because they also have to have documentation. Documentation gives context.
Okay.
If somebody is simply wearing the trim, there is no context.
Right. Okay, I gotcha.
So you don't know, like, is this dude a white supremacist? Or is he just incredibly clueless? So it's definitely, you have to have context.
Right.
So
Because like some of the links you had shared had shown, and there was descriptions of how it was made and the way the pattern was laid, and I couldn't really follow it because I'm some plebeian who's not familiar. But even just like the method of creating these things seems amazing to me, and there's a lot of effort that goes into it. But at the same time, you should know better.
yeah,
And-
yeah, it's a super hard pattern. Okay, I'm just gonna throw it out. Like, it is a test of skill. However, there are other different patterns that are also a test of skill.
Mhm.
So how about we do those?
Was what was the argument basic? Like, did they try to stand behind the we'll reclaim it for something better, or because
Yeah, well, they were like, hey, look, it's an ancient symbol that didn't, was, co-opted by the Nazis. So we're going to wear it in respect of that former
Mhm.
thing. And I'm like, problem with that, it's called genocide. So kind of hard to forget in the modern context.
one of the links you shared, some of the research that you've done, even had like the Native Americans who have used that symbol, and they were like, you know what, we're gonna erase this too, because
Yeah,
even still,
they actually signed it in 1940. They signed the Whirling Log Agreement. There were a bunch of tribes that got together and signed this Whirling Log Agreement in 1940 before the war was over, saying, hey, yeah, no.
even though there's no connection, even though it's been years for however long, they understood. Yeah,
It's not going to go away. Yeah, they knew in 1940 that
It's already
it was
gone.
not. It's not going to be
There's
able
no
to be used.
there's no answer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think anybody who tries to defend trying to reclaim it is being arrogant, because these people, these Native American people, who the symbol is a part of their culture, so they have a personal stake in this. If they can give it up because they know it can't be reclaimed, what arrogance is it that we who do not have any cultural claim on this
Mhm.
think that we can do the same? I'm
Okay.
like, really? Really? So, yeah, no. Historical accuracy does not trump modern context. So basically what ended up happening was a lot went down. They released, the king and queen released a first apology, and then we found out that they actually wore it at a second event.
Yikes.
Wait, what was the timeline? Did they apologize then wear it again, or?
No, they apologized after the second time.
Oh,
because
okay,
they got
Okay.
so like they wore it on the 6th of January, and then they wore it again on the 20th of January. On the 27th of January was about when things were blowing up,
Mhm.
because that's also when the statement on hate speech came out from the board. Also, coincidentally, the 27th is International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Right.
Yes.
So that happened, and then so they apologized originally, saying, "We're sorry, you're mad."
Yes, the
which is
non-apology.
a non-apology.
The Jeremy Renner approach.
Yes. So we're sorry you're mad, and then more happened. The weaver of the trim said, "But it's so pretty. I'm sorry you're mad. I didn't mean to offend anyone." We have screenshots that say otherwise, but and then we found out that another royal from another kingdom
Ooh.
had worn the trim previously in like 2017.
Oh. Huh.
So pictures surfaced of him wearing it.
Yeah.
And he stopped wearing it around the time of Charlottesville, I think. I'd have to like go back when Charlottesville happened, that really started him thinking about, hey, maybe I shouldn't.
Oh, it's like he knew better.
Maybe
all of a
this is a
sudden.
little tone deaf.
But even his apology was like, why y'all so mad?
Jesus.
You know, like, I won't wear it again, but damn. So like it wasn't the greatest apology either.
Yeah.
And then the weaver and the king and queen decide to that they're gonna burn the trim. And I'm like, well, that's just trauma porn. I don't really think that's appropriate. Seeing as Nazis and burning have a bad history. I think what would have been more appropriate is that the trim could have been disposed of privately, and perhaps the weaver of said trim could have written a piece of documentation or something on the Snartame 05 in the modern context. But no, that did not in fact happen. So then the former king and queen abdicated.
Okay.
They stepped down, and they said, "Hey, we messed up so bad that there's no fixing it. So we're gonna, for the good of the SCA and for the kingdom and for our people, we're gonna step down. We're gonna abdicate."
Mm-hmm.
Which is the only sensible thing they could do.
Right.
Then the weaver did burn the trim. It took a while and some accelerant, but he burned the trim. Funny thing about wool is that it's actually not very flammable. So there's actually ways to tell fibers by how it burns and what the ash looks like. It's called the burn test. It's really fascinating. Anyway, And then the most recent thing on that particular timeline is that they've chosen a regent to rule the kingdom until the next crown tourney, where they'll choose a new person. And I think they're going to crown them the same day. But like, but they've chosen a regent. They've chosen somebody that everybody that was involved at that level agreed upon. And so that happened. There was a period of time where there was some overreaction from people. Yes, Nazis are bad. Yes, I believe in punching Nazis, even if it's not physically, because I'm weak, but I can write a really, really angry letter.
Well, I think
use the weapons that you're given.
One of the statements I saw posted was like, you don't have to physically punch them as long as you also make it known they're not welcome.
Exactly.
And they shouldn't have to be. Yeah, yeah.
You know, like, so one of my favorite examples is MailChimp, the distribution mail service. They changed their terms of service, and then banned Milo Y, Yiannopoulos, whatever.
Yeah.
That dude.
Yeah. Yep.
They changed their term of service and booted him.
Good.
And that's punching a Nazi. You know, you don't have to actually commit assault to punch a Nazi, right? So you just have to make them super uncomfortable. But it goes a little too far sometimes, and in this case it did. There was issues with doxing, and it was a bad news all around, and people did it because they were misinformed, which was even worse. Because they found like voting records or something like that, and they were like, hey, he belonged to this party at one point, and that, like, if it was they thought it was the ABC party when it was actually the ACB party, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So one is a hate group, one is a conservative group. Like, yeah, no, not quite.
Right.
But they were throwing this information around like it was the hate group, and that he, you know, like all of this information, and it was just really, really bad.
There's levels to how you should deal with something.
Right.
And
but you have to get your information correct.
Yes.
First of all.
Definitely. It's
like,
I get that, like, people can be passionate about it, they can be angry about it, but just make sure you're still smart while you're angry, and like you have your priorities in line, and like even then there's still going to be a too far at some point, and just
exactly
you don't want to end up making the same mistakes that the person you're targeting has made.
Exactly. I mean, to be frank, we're already on the Southern Poverty Law Center's radar. They published an article about us, about the situation. So that was not fun, but it's actually a fairly good article, as articles go when you're on the Southern Poverty Law Center's radar. It's pretty fair, even-handed. They pointed out that the board and the majority of members were like, no. But they published it, and there was also an article in the UK that was done about it, but people are actually really angry about that one because they used some photos from, I think, Australia.
So they didn't get the story straight. Yeah.
Well, they used photos from Australia because it was a battle photo, you know, so they didn't even like get photos of the event that they were at.
Right.
So it was the story was correct, but like if you're gonna link people, you need to like link the right people. So
like I said, some media will just choose what's flashy.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what happened in this case. But it's just, and I think the photographer is working on issuing a takedown notice. So, because they didn't ask permission. Yeah, so I went through, and in putting together all these links, I also wanted to provide context of why this is bad. because some people just are like, hey, no, let's reclaim it. And I'm like, nah, not gonna work. So I did a lot of digging around for solid information, like SPLC's profiles on neo-Nazi ideology, like the different hate groups that use it, a list of active anti-government groups in the U.S., which does list that one group that they thought the dude was a part of, but isn't. Like the Anti-Defamation League's database of hate symbols, a lot of information about the Whirling Log Agreement with the Native American tribes. And then I found this really interesting article from the Smithsonian Magazine about the Nazi appropriation of the swastika.
Yeah.
And it's definitely fascinating to read because the dude who found it, he was an archaeologist. He originally wanted to discover the ancient city of Troy using the Iliad.
Huh.
Yeah. So
I brought up Genosha earlier. I'm gonna actually find the island of Genosha by following X-Men comic books.
Obviously.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So he was convinced it was real. So he was German, and so he went and he basically made a fortune trading raw materials for ammunition production at that point. And then he was a real fanboy of Homer because he didn't just follow the Iliad for where everything was. He took Homer's advice on local customs and treating physical illnesses. I don't think that was a great idea, but
he
whatever.
looked everywhere for a Cyclops to fight and stab his eye out. I don't.
Spoilers, man.
He just wanted to say, no one. That's all it is. So he wanted to find the site of the Trojan War. I mean, he was. Somebody said, but here also is a weakness. He was not very good at separating fact from inspiration.
Oh.
So in 1871, he actually found the inspiration for one of the cities. It's not actually the city in the Iliad, obviously, but it's one of the interpretation where it was, kind of what it was built after, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And he also found the swastika. That was how he brought it back to Germany. It was on the coast of Turkey that he found it. And it was definitely, it was one of those, he kept on finding it everywhere. It was a spindle whorl or a swastika.
Mm-hmm.
And then he saw the symbol everywhere after that because, once you're looking for something, you're going to see it. And also because it is a super popular symbol within many different cultures. And, I think Coke used it at one point as a symbol of good luck.
Yeah.
Along with the Boy and Girl Scouts. So, yeah, it's definitely, it was for good luck, right? So,
protection
but then,
and whatnot, yeah.
Yeah, but then it became the symbol of a new movement, a wave of nationalism, per se.
Yep.
In Germany. So they, because they were like, hey, look, this symbol, they're very old. They take us back to the later Stone Ages of the Aryan race. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. So they basically kind of just co-opted it, and they were like, no, that we are the master race. We are obviously the best. And one genocide later, it is utterly corrupt.
Right.
You cannot bring it back. So,
I would like to think there's not a chance of this happening again or this recurring somehow.
I'd like to think that.
Yeah.
I would really like to think that. That's one of the reasons why I put together my website.
Right.
Because I'm not going to let the SCA be where it hides.
Good call.
Inclusive SCA is for everyone. So we've had issues with it's the same issues going on everywhere. It's just coming to light.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hate speech, the racist attitudes. There are people of color being pushed out of the SCA because they're told they can only do one thing, and I'm like, no. So we have very limited outreach with the LGBT community. We have like the biggest thing to happen to them in ages was when they decided that you can fight for a same gender couple for crown, and that's really, really recent.
Mm-hmm.
Then another group that a lot of people don't seem to realize are being excluded is those who have religious obligations lasting through Saturday, like observant Jews. So I have an acquaintance who unless the event lasts from Friday to Sunday, he can't go because he's not allowed to drive on Saturday because that's work. You're not allowed to work on the Sabbath. So, and it's definitely like he's an amazing scholar, but he can only come to so many events because there's only so many events that start on Friday, because most of our events happen just on Saturdays. I think we should have more events on Sunday, mm-hmm. because that would also include more people. But we've been having Saturday events since 1966, so
well,
that one might be a tough sell.
We just recently learned, I forgot who we were talking to. Salt Lake City Comic-Con runs Thursday to Saturday.
Yeah, I don't remember who we were talking to.
Yeah,
about that.
And they don't have convention on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And it's like Sunday's a day because no one works on Sunday. If you make people, you're not going to make them go to the convention and do their job or whatever, because that's the Sabbath day.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, they're like in Pennsylvania, there's a bunch of blue laws still on the books where you can't buy hard liquor or items of work. So you couldn't buy a broom on Sunday.
Huh.
Yeah. So most of them are off the books now because, well, blue laws kind of get written out whenever they can. But there are still some places that will not sell you items of work on Sunday. I think, but in coordination with all of this, back in the summer of 2017, we, as the SCA, have a new policy against harassment and bullying.
Mm-hmm.
And it was needed. Of course, we had the people kind of echoing what happened through the con scene, because the harassment and bullying policies that swept through most cons started in 2016, late 2015, but in 2016 mostly. And so I was watching literally a repeat of what happened with the con community. Because you had the people saying, we don't need this policy, I can't talk to somebody, it's just a joke, whatever. No, trust me, we need it. It worked for the con community. It's going to work here. Just chill out, let it go. But it was literally an echo, and it was kind of eerie. Um, so I do, like, but it is one of those things where they do say it's not just if you have been harassed or bullied. If you know it's happening, you are obligated to report it.
Right.
So, which is a little different from some other bullying statements I've seen. So I really like that part of it, that, if you know it's going on, you need to report it. So, that was, that was my favorite part of it, I think. But it does help us codify, like, okay, no, this behavior is unacceptable.
Yeah. It's a shame a
Because-
community needs that, though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's not that they weren't ever there before.
Right.
'Cause
Yeah.
it's just we went around them. Like growing up, I knew that there were people I shouldn't talk to. Not because anybody told me that I shouldn't talk to them. No, just because that's the vibe,
Yeah.
But, like now we just talk about it. And instead of saying, for instance, having a bunch of ladies get together and being like, okay, so don't talk to this guy, watch yourself around this guy. Instead, we're all saying #MeToo, and oh, by the way, I'm going to name names.
Right.
Publicly and loudly. And we need that. We do. Because no matter what section of society you're in, you need to be... Okay, so there's a paradox. It's called the tolerance paradox, where to have a tolerant society, you must be intolerant of intolerance.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that statement go around.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe in it very much. So, if you're going to harsh my pillow, I'm not going to deal with you. So it's definitely a case of being able to have a voice, having people there to listen as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is also very important. So
this has been super informative.
Yeah.
To say the least.
And I don't want to say that, like, don't join the SCA because we've had trouble. I want to tell people, join the SCA so we can be the society we should be. Join up so that you have a voice. Join up and learn and love the whole entire community that is there to support you. And if by some chance some creep gets in there, report him.
Right.
And or her. And, and don't even give them the time of day, because that's not, the SCA is not theirs.
Yeah.
So it's ours. The ones that want to make it better, the ones that want to make it more inclusive, the ones that want to support people. It's going to have, your fair share of, I don't want to say drama, because that kind of trivialize that word.
Yeah, I follow.
It it kind of does that, but like, yeah, we have drama too. I mean, because there are oh my God, my boyfriend broke up with me for some other dude, and then but then my girlfriend decided that she was mad at him more than I'm mad at him, so she started telling rumors. I mean, that stuff happens.
Now the events get awkward.
Exactly, but so things like that happen, but it's going to also happen everywhere, and you might as well have fun. You
can actually go beat the guy with a sword as long as you agree to it on the the jousting grounds.
Technically, dueling is illegal. Technically.
Yeah.
But that said, I'm sure fighter practices get exciting sometimes. But yeah, no, it's definitely, I like just being able to learn whatever I want to learn about. Like, even with this whole even with the swastika issue, I was learning so much
Yeah, it
about
was super interesting.
documents.
Yeah.
Like going back and learning about the weaving, and going back and finding like having people link me to pictures of somebody who actually went to the museum where that fragment is kept, and like they got to see the museum reproduction as opposed to this grainy black and white picture, which is out of a book published in like 19 something or other. But like, so being able to kind of crowdsource the information and have it be accurate.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a learning experience, and one that I'm really thankful I had. And I also am thankful that it's allowing people to have conversations about inclusivity. So I like it.
This was informative and I'm literally exhausted from learning so much. I've been like the last hour and 20 minutes have been spent not only talking to you about the SCA, but browsing the website, looking at different kingdoms. I've had the map up the entire time just so I can it's really fascinating stuff. And
prior to this, the most we've gotten.
One last thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because I think it's actually kind of funny. So when you're a member of the SCA, you have an option where you can build a persona. Kind of like, so this is what I'm going to base my garb on.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm going to base like my everything I do on, right? And with that comes choosing a name. And you can register it with the College of Heralds so no one else can use that name.
Huh.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I have had two in my life. The first one given to me by my parents because there was an issue with someone calling their child Elfkafu at SCA events when she was a kid. And then when she went to elementary school, she's like, that's not my name. You can't call me that. My daddy's king.
Oh, yep.
Because she wouldn't answer to anything but Elfkafu.
Huh.
And then her very sheepish daddy had to explain that, yes, in fact, he was king, but in a pretend kind of way. So my parents called me Amber, Rurik's daughter, my dad's name being Rurik. So, they called me Amber, Rurik's daughter when I was a kid, and that way, I would actually answer to my name. But then when I grew up, I'm in my late teens, early 20s. I'm like, you know what? I want a new name. So I decided that 14th century England is a great place to find garb. The outfit's great. I love it. Looks good on me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's find something. Well, okay, so Barbara is a lovely English name. And hey, look, there's this town. It's spelled Bonei. It's pronounced bunny. So I am Lady Barbara of Bunny in the SCA. And everyone calls me Babs. So I am Babs Bunny in the SCA.
That is fantastic. Oh, man.
So, yes, you too can do strange things with your name.
That's fun.
Yeah.
This was very fun, Amber. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about everything. I have a lot of compression and digestion to do of all this information.
I was going to say, before this, the most we've gotten, I've been watching YouTube videos of, what was it? Primitive technology?
Yeah. Yep.
We watched the guy build mud huts and
Yeah.
But,
Build some stuff. But this was super rad. Again, we really appreciate you taking a big chunk out of your Valentine's Day, no doubt, to come on and talk to us. This was super rad.
I had a great time.
Awesome. I believe that is going to do it. If you're interested, if you're even remotely kind of piqued about what exactly we're talking about, honestly, check it out. Go check out their website. I mean, They're across the globe, so you'd be hard pressed to find a place where you wouldn't be able to find someone or like a gathering or an event near you or something like that. So go check it out. You might even be a king someday. Who knows? Or queen. But I believe that is going to do it for us this week. Again, Amber, big thanks. Until next time, I am JR.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Amber.
And this has been episode 309 of Opinions May Vary.